Can dismiss the governor's order, so we will call roll.
Here.
Commissioner Dodd?
Here.
Commissioner Harris?
Here.
Commissioner Piercy?
Here.
Commissioner P?
Here.
Commissioner Chirino?
Yeah.
Chairman Cush?
Present.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Rachel. All right, first item of business. Our next meeting is April 21, which is a week from today. Your assignment for the very opening of that meeting is to hand in your answered scoring sheets for last night and the two that we will cover tonight. So these are due the first of that meeting, April 21st. So last night's scoring sheet and this whatever we get through tonight will be due on the 21st. All right? So please make a note of that. That's important. We have two presentations tonight, correct, Becky? All right. And let's just jump right into that. Oh, yes, we do have a set of minutes from our last meeting, and I would like to call on Vice Chair Piercy for the approval.
Chairman Cush, I have reviewed the minutes. They're very short, and I do find them in order. I move for their approval.
Thank you, Steve. Do we have a
Second.
All right. Rachel, if you'll call roll.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Chirino?
Yes.
Commissioner Blair?
Yes.
Chairman Cush?
Yes. All right. Becky, you may take command.
Want this explained? Okay, so I've been asked to actually explain this sheet to you, first of all. The sheet that we handed out yesterday, or I guess it was late last night.
Scoring sheet.
The scoring sheet,
Okay.
Thank you. So I've been asked to explain that to you all again.
Do I need to sign it?
Basically, these are the categories that we decided we would rank or score each of the RFPs on. So you're looking at the things we've talked about for the past couple of years: qualifications and experience, comprehensive project plan, clarity and organization of the proposal, proposed facilities, commitment to community relations and public education, customer service, expectation of county resources, contingency plans, cost proposal, and then your performance measures. And because we gave each of those 10 points, I'll ask that you all grade them independent of the other, just so that you're grading apples to apples. Do you all have any questions about this, thoughts about this? I think there was a consensus of, are you going to take these? Do you need these? What do you want from these? If nothing else, we need the score over on the side as a number, so that we can then look at the score overall based on what you have ranked or what you have rated each RFP by. And when we look at those, we'll look at what are the 4 companies with the 4 or 5 companies, whichever number you choose. We'll actually look at those and say, these are the 4 or 5 top ranked companies. We'll actually come back and look at those as which was ranked where.
Becky, question. There are 10 different items, so if they all got a 10 score, that would add up to be a perfect 100.
Yes, sir.
It looks like there is space on each item if they want to make notes. But is that necessary that they make a note, or in some cases, if they just choose to make a numerical score, is that sufficient?
Not necessary for notes. That was primarily just for you all to have space to write notes as the conversation proceeds or as the questions come up. I know that Steve mentioned a couple of things from this sheet last night as far as a couple of the questions he asked actually came up with customer service and that type thing, so that's where he had gotten that information.
Okay. And do we need to put our names on these, or are these anonymous, or what does that matter?
As long as I get one from everyone here that gets to vote,
Okay.
then we're good.
3, 4, 5, 6. So as long as you get 7 back, you're okay?
Yes,
Right?
yes.
Okay.
Make sure you put, just if nothing else, make sure you put the company name at the top, so I know which company goes with which numbers.
Right. All right. Everybody clear? All right.
Anybody got questions? Okay.
Okay.
All right, so We're going to roll into the first presentation of the evening. The first company that comes before us will be Rockwood Sustainable Solutions. Some of you all may actually recognize Lincoln Young as a person who was here back in 2014 with Ground Up Recycling. I'm going to let him tell you a little bit more about his company when he comes forward, but basically since that time, he has formed a public-private partnership with the City of Lebanon, primarily collecting wood from local businesses. They continue to supply feedstock to the downdraft gasification system at the City of Lebanon, process over 30,000 tons of wood waste and vegetation, as well as tires each year. Recently did partner with Wilson County on tornado recovery, as well as the City of Lebanon back in March last month. Basically, they do have, as a team, they have experience in project development, permitting, planning, and management of large-scale collection and processing. They're experienced to process both construction and demolition debris, as well as municipal solid waste. In partnership with benchmark companies, they're able to grind large amounts of both wood waste as well as other materials, and overall there are actually 7 years of experience between the two, and to include shingles, concrete, and wood waste in those processing efforts. Rockwood plans to, would love to actually partner with the county, opportunity to partner with the county, other qualified vendors, and others that can fill the need for an integrated solid waste system. Their focus or their purpose would be C&D recycling as well as logistics. There is the project team, and then there are references there at the top of page 2. Their proposal is to grind and process wood waste, yard waste, and other C&D materials to include transportation. They propose to grind wood waste and vegetation to include brush collected by the City of Murfreesboro if Murfreesboro decides that's something they want to join in on. Initial proposal would be to grind wood just with one pass, clear of metal and other contamination. Pricing would be based on either cubic yard or tonnage. Usually it's done by cubic yard. Proposed pricing is for wood vegetation being left here for use at Rutherford County landfill properties. So primarily this is for grinding wood waste that can be used here in your facilities throughout the county. Current resources accommodate processing of 400 yards per hour or 100 tons of vegetation per day. Record keeping of all transactions, materials processed, and other data would be collected by them and made available on request. Response and assistance in post-disaster debris management is an option. They would commit to having a Rockwood representative on site at collection points to manage the inbound materials. This proposal does not include collection or operation of Rutherford County-owned convenience centers. There is a rail transportation partnership component, a long-term lease agreement on some county-owned property. In the public-private partnership, Rutherford County would assist in building a rail-served transload facility, and I'll let Mr. Young share what exactly assistance that means, what that is defined as. The Rockwood team would operate the transload facility, load rail cars, and prepare cars for shipping. Rockwood partners would manage freight logistics and facility offloading, ensure all materials are handled properly, adequately, and efficiently. And that piece is simply transportation. So it's wood waste as well as transportation, which could be handled either together or separately. A cost per yard can actually be quoted to cover removal and transportation of excess materials as needed. And then at the bottom of the page, you see the 4 functions that they've proposed are a MRF, a transfer station, truck and train transportation, and they've proposed to handle wood waste, yard waste, and construction and demolition debris. And construction and demolition debris is one of those materials we talked about at length, simply because it's not necessarily a residential waste stream, but it is something that we have to look at because it's filling up our Class 1 landfill space. And so I think the C&D piece is important when we start to look at this presentation. And with the, do y'all have any questions at this point? With that, I'll ask the committee chairman to recognize Mr. Young when appropriate.
Thank you, Becky. Lincoln, are you ready? Lincoln Young, welcome. And we look forward to your presentation and your Q&A portion. You're welcome. I make sure your mic is on, yes, and don't feel bad about having your back to us.
Okay.
Just address, address those folks in front of you and the TV.
Sounds great.
The TV audience.
Thank you all for the time tonight. I did not bring a presentation with me today, and admittedly, as Becky was up here talking, also realized that, and I wanted to start with this, but with the RFP, RFP is really designed for the ability to get an all-encompassing plan. And I recognize that my plan is not all-encompassing. We're talking about C&D and we're talking about transportation. So what I'd like to do is just give a brief history of our business, talk to you a little bit about what we do on a daily basis. I don't want to take up a ton of your time because I know we've got some other guys here with some processing equipment and things of that nature. So be open for any questions as well. But I'm Lincoln Young. I am the owner of Rockwood Sustainable Solutions. And and our business has been in business since 2015. So it started as a company called Ground Up Recycling. If you drive Murfreesboro Road to 840, what used to be LoJack is now Vulcan Materials, and right inside that site was our shingle facility. So in 2014, I stood before you with a plan to collect shingles, to remove those from the Rutherford County landfill, to process those shingles and to be used back into hot mix asphalt. Since 2015, that was done on a yearly basis to the tune of about 15,000 tons out of the Murfreesboro area, where we were collecting those products, we were recycling them, and we were using them back in beneficial end-use products, which is basically putting it back in asphalt over the last 7 years. And so, anyways, it's a great example, really, of what our business is and can be. So, over the last few years, our business has changed. We partnered with LoJack. LoJack's a local company here that most of you are familiar with, and then was given the opportunity in 2019 to purchase the recycling business back from them, and did so. And so since then, we have grown our business continually, and really what we do is we are a piece of the puzzle. So when you look at the whole solid waste picture, unfortunately, it's not really neat and concise. It's all over the place. There's hazardous waste, there's municipal solid waste, there's C&D. I'm not going to educate you on that. You've been going through this for years. But we are a piece of that puzzle. So what we do now is our facility in Lebanon is right there on Hartman Drive. And so what we do now is our main thing is wood. So we still handle some shingles. That's still in partnership with Vulcan Materials now, who is still grinding, collecting shingles every day and does a fantastic job at that. But we still help there. But the majority of what we're doing now is wood waste. And so we're bringing in this wood waste. We are sorting it. We're processing this material. And we're getting out anything that's got value. Other than that, it's going through a grinder where we're making mulch. We're making a material that goes for fuel. In that process, we're also taking tires. We do tire recycling now on a very, very small scale, about 700 to 1,000 tons a year. So we're handling tire processing as well, and then in the process of just helping our customers, we're now baling cardboard and helping with some plastic and doing some processing of those materials. As Becky mentioned, we also have the ability to do some large scale grinding through whether that's a tornado or an emergency event, through C&D materials and things of that nature. The biggest way that we're growing though right now is C&D and C&D recycling. So whether it's a lead project where a contractor is trying to get lead engineering points through the recycling of materials, we're able to help in that. So over the last couple of years, what we've decided is we were having for 2 or 3 years, we would just tell everybody, only thing we'll take is wood. Well, unfortunately, the way trash works is when you have a metal bin on someone's site, they put everything in it. So you have to be able to handle everything. So what was happening is we were handling everything anyways. And so instead of making everybody mad because we were complaining all the time on contamination, we just figured out ways to handle it. So what that looks like on C&D is that looks like us processing PVC pipe and sending it to a plastic recycler. It looks like us taking concrete out of the loads and processing that and using it back into driveways and back into parking lot mix and really just trying to attack what comes in the door and figuring it out. So with that said, that's basically our business. It's helping, it's meeting that piece of the puzzle. On the other side of that is transportation, and I know that in our RFP we looked at transportation. So the biggest thing that we have to look at is, we have the ability for folks to bring materials to us, but we also have to be able to move those materials out, whether that's to a recycler or whether that's the residuals of the things that we can't recycle off the C&D site. Those materials have to be moved out. So we are able to do that on a small scale through some trucking applications. And have and own several trucks in order to do that. But then I know that in our RFP we have a partnership with a company that's interested in doing a rail service. And so that is not something that we are currently doing right now. We don't have rail on our site. We don't have a place to go show you at the moment, but I can take you to other parts of the state where that's the case. And so just to kind of give a simple picture of what that would look like, there's a really nice rail that runs through town. There would be a piece of property that would be purchased or leased together as a partnership with you guys. There would be a transfer station, a large building built. I think it would need to be something that was built to a good scale, that was built where it was clean, where the public wouldn't have the perception of just a big industrial site, but make it look nice. You would have trucks come in, they would dump in an indoor facility. From that point, there would be a car that would move inside of this building where materials would be loaded up and then they would be moved out on a daily basis. So there is, again, looking at the whole picture of partnership and the picture of a piece that doesn't probably solve everybody's problem, but what it could do is it could be an option for a piece of the solution. So whether that was C&D, whether that was materials that wouldn't go through a MRF, or materials that wouldn't go through a waste facility or waste away. I know those guys will be here in just a minute. Whether or not there's always a piece that maybe doesn't work. And so those are options for that. So that is basically Rockwood Sustainable Solutions. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Mr. Young, I'm intrigued by what you just finished talking about on the transportation part, and of course you've identified a parcel of 20 acres that we have in Florence. I'm intrigued with that. So you vision that as us putting in a sidetrack agreement with CSX and a partner that you have that would be interested in putting in that MRF?
Yes, sir.
Or would you do that?
So what we would do, I think it would be a couple of folks. I think the county would have to be on board, obviously.
Since it's our property.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I think that there would need to be there is a specific group of individuals that are experts at moving material on the rail and then there's going to have to be a loading process. So where Rockwood Sustainable would handle would be whether that was the county that decided to handle the scales, or whether that was Rockwood that decided to handle the scales, but there would be the scaling and billing portion, the whole accounting piece, and then there would also have to be the collection and loading piece. And so what we would want to do there is, even though that rail would be there, we want to have adequate room to be able to remove the materials that we could use locally or had value locally that we weren't able to get on the rail, and then move everything else onto that. So we'd love to be able to pull metal. We'd want to be able to pull the wood that we could use. We'd want to be able to pull some of the cardboard and plastic in an efficient way, and then at that point load those cars so that they're out of there. So where our operation would be the management and operations of loading the cars.
So I asked Ms. Caldwell if 20 acres would be suitable for that type of operation, and she nodded, yes, it would be, earlier.
Yeah.
And so I'm intrigued about that, because a lot of folks are going, well, take that trash somewhere else. I know there's a big landfill down in Alabama that seems to be receiving a lot right now by rail.
That's probably where this would head.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
So Lincoln, yeah, I'm on. So are you envisioning like a transfer station at this site where you would sort?
Yes.
Okay, and reclaim the recyclables that you could use, sell at the open market for a price, and then you pull cardboard, whatever, repackage, and then load on a train or
Yes.
and
So
get it better done.
really as simple as a couple of material handlers. And so as the material would come in, there may be an initial material handler there that was kind of going through, making sure that the material was, anything that they could pick off the top. I'm not suggesting, I think that there's some RFP bids in for large-scale MRFs. Those are much more efficient. On 20 acres, if you tried to do everything on those 20 acres, I think it'd be really tight. But in terms of bringing material in that was non-sorted, non-separated, straight from the convenience centers, you drop that on the ground, anything that could be removed runs through a magnet process that's going to get those materials out, and then from there it's running straight into a car.
All right. Another question I had when in your dissertation, I live in a fairly new and expanding subdivision, so I see new streets every month, new slabs, new houses going up constantly, and I see these big blue bins in every yard where construction trash is going in. And you talked about at first we wanted just wood, but then everything goes in from drywall to anything. Is that the kind of material that on the C&D side that you're getting and handling? So like, what do you do with all the drywall and all that other kind of material that you really don't want?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the materials that we're getting on the C&D, the wood, the concrete, those materials are pretty easy to handle internally. They're easy to handle kind of in the local market. Your big issues are going to be drywall. The big issues are drywall, insulation, some of the stuff that's really contaminated. So a lot of that right now is going to landfill. And then as we continue to bring these materials in, we're looking at how do you take those things and how do you find recycling outlets for them. And I could sit up here and talk all night about working together, but the problem with C&D, construction demolition, is typically it's very heavy. So when you look at hauling those heavy materials out by truck, what you start seeing in an example of shingles is where most people are hauling waste in a large 53-foot trailer, you're at road capacity in a 20-yard triple axle or tri-axle dump truck. So it's the same with drywall is so heavy that really what we have to start looking at is how do we use these things internally. So a lot of the stuff like drywall, I think can be mixed with compost, can be mixed with wood, And those things are things that we're working on right now with the University of Tennessee, as well as many other companies, where we're trying to see how we can get those into local ag markets. And so I'm not going to say that's idealistic, because it's very easily accomplished, but it does take some work. So there is a portion right now, as much as I would love to say, and we're an extremely large, passionate recycler. But as much as I'd love to say there's no place for landfill, unfortunately right now a lot of that material is having to find a home in a landfill. We're working on how do we change those markets a little bit. When you talk about drywall, I think one of the best markets for drywall is probably as a bulking agent in some type of soil compost application or something of that nature. Got a very good friend of mine in Philadelphia that does a lot of drywall recycling. That's all his business does. And the majority of what he's moving it to is to chicken houses, poultry. I know I just said chicken, that's poultry, that's the same thing. Cows, all these different applications there. And so it's just finding the markets for them. So it's not impossible, but it's kind of like building a home. If you put drywall on the wall before you put the electrical in, you're doing it backwards. So you kind of have to figure out how much you've got, and then you've got to figure out where it's going to go. So it's very hard to figure out where it's going to go unless you know what you've got. So there is that process of really the whole general waste stream, putting it all together and saying, all right, this is what we've got, now let's go find a home for it. On C&D, although I'm a very big advocate of trying to keep as much of that stuff local as possible, just because trucking waits.
Right.
So, yes, sir.
All right. Gentlemen, jump in.
Thanks, and I'll defer to Steve in a moment. Where do you envision a sufficient quantity coming from if we can't divert a private hauler's dumpster at a subdivision? We only have access to our convenience centers, which aren't C&D. Where, as a matter of fact, we're pushing people away with bulk items of certain volume. So how do you see diverting material to your yard?
So that's where the capital market comes in. Now, I'm going to say that, but I'm also going to say that there may be some things that the county may say, well, Lincoln, we don't want you doing this, or we want this for this specifically. So I'm going to pull that out of the conversation for a moment. I will tell you that for the most part, we are able to be competitive with and not only competitive, but also friendly with the companies that are in town. The big companies that have landfills in Metro or have landfills here in Rutherford County, we've worked together with them on several occasions, because what they recognize is that they need local homes on transportation for MSW, and this C&D is filling that up. So what we would envision there is there would have to be a tipping fee at these locations. That tipping fee would need to cover transportation, it need to cover loading, and need to cover margin. But that is doable. And not only is it doable, but the other big thing that you will start getting at these facilities as you spread out maybe some of where this waste is moving is the trucking. And trucking is becoming a huge deal. If you work in any industry that's trying to hire truck drivers right now, you probably look like I do, because it is extremely hard to make that work, extremely hard to find drivers. And so right now what's happening is to get in and out of a facility, it's taking an hour and a half, 2 hours. Even though it may be a little cheaper there, you can pay a little bit higher rate on a roll-off box coming into a facility that you can get in and out of in 10 minutes versus sitting in line. So I would tell you that taking away, again, I know that there would be some conversations and negotiation on what this facility looked like and what exactly it would handle, but on our side, in order to make it work, it would have to be open for private industry to be able to utilize and move materials in an efficient manner, but also paying a fee at the gate.
You competitively would draw your yard would be chosen over a competitor?
Yes.
Okay.
So what percentage of our residential waste stream do you think you could affect?
So, on the grinding side, I'll just be honest with you, there's not much in terms of your RFP from the convenience centers. You're not taking green wood, you're not taking wood at that nature. When it comes to transportation, if it got to the point where you said, okay, we want to move this all to one location and transport it out of it, there would be no problem with us handling your full waste streams. We have downstream providers that are able for 100 years at 20,000 tons a day. So there would be no problem in moving the material.
Would you repeat that tonnage that you just said? You have folks on the receiving end that could take
Yeah, on
how
the
much?
receiving end with about 20,000 tons a day of permitted landfill space at about a 100-year lifespan.
That scenario, you're suggesting a single stream to your location, MSW, C&D, and divert landfill material through rail. You think you can handle all we can give you is what kind of how you answered Wayne, is that right?
We could. I'll tell you that, again, I know I've said this a couple of times, we're a piece to the puzzle. The reason I say that is I'm not suggesting that. The reason I'm not suggesting that, yes, we could handle it, but I think that I'm not going to say I think a very competitive move, a very long-term approach would be to have options. So I think that there needs to be a waste-to-energy solution in town. I think there needs to be a MRF in town. I think there needs to be a compost in town, and I think there needs to be the ability to get everything else out of town. So, because we all know that when the landfill's full, there's not going to be another one probably in town. So we got to be able to move that material. The closest place to this is Smith County. From after that, you're going all the way down to I-75. So I'm sorry, I'm missing a few, but there are more local options, but for the most part, the materials are going to have to be put on a truck somewhere and moved. And so at that point, we'll look at how do you efficiently do that. So no, I will tell you that I would not recommend that you just look at me as an all-exclusive, we're going to take this to one spot, we're going to throw it on here, and we're going to go. I think it makes a lot of sense to look at it as a piece of the puzzle, though. Yes, sir.
Mr. Young?
Yes, sir.
I like you. I like you because you're boots on the ground. You've been involved for a while. You're in it. You're in the stuff.
Agree with that.
Wood waste is your specialty. Tires you dabble in. You bail a little bit here and there on some other stuff. I was looking back through here to see because I didn't see where you were taking. But you just explained it. Our solid waste needs as a whole. So your forte basically is grinding the tree limbs, brush, wood, and we've got a lot of that with all the building going on in Rutherford County. So I mean, that is a need, and you are a piece there. But then you say, but I can do this too, which opens up another door that's really not in your RFP.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's the part that I was like, man, you could connect a lot of dots. You need to put the pencil on the paper a little more,
right?
And help us get to where we're trying to go. I think So, and our tonnage, and you're just looking at our tonnage. So our tonnage that you're thinking is that 45,000 tons a year, correct? But could be the possibility of we just talked about last night, 300,000 people, 1 ton per person, that's 300,000 tons somewhere. But that's going to be other folks picking that up. We're not going to have everything.
Right.
So talk to me just a minute. I'll get to my question here. The tires. Tires is a big deal for us. I mean, we're hauling out a numerous amount of tires.
Yes, sir.
Are you? Yeah. Are you
One or
taking?
two is exactly right, yes.
I'm
Taking
sorry.
out the-
Hold on. How many tires, Mac? Did you?
Last year was a little over
4,000
4,000.
tons of tires.
4,000 tons. What, $500,000 or $300,000 or $400,000 a year? You know, as far as taking them. So
I believe last year was 335,000, some pretty close.
That's pretty close.
okay. So are you taking the wires, the steel belts out, and then putting that tread back into asphalt? Is that your
No,
claim?
the tires doesn't have anything to do with asphalt.
Okay.
No, sir. So we started tire recycling for the purpose of going into waste to energy. It didn't work. The reason it didn't work was when you put it in a furnace, the rubber burns off and the metal welds together and forms what we call a bird's nest, which is about this big and a big old welded metal piece, and it's absolutely horrible. So all we do, the state of Tennessee will allow you to use 2-inch tire chips as septic tank fill lines, and that's where every bit of ours goes. Matter of fact, we're moving about 700 to 1,000 tons a year of tires into local septic tank installation.
That's with the steel belts in there?
Yes, sir.
So they're just chopped with the steel belts in
Just
there.
chopped
I
with
got you.
stuff. So
I got you.
according to the spec, it has got to be, there's an ASTM number. It's similar to a number 4 rock, but it's a 2-inch rock or 2-inch aggregate, and the wire has to be no more than a 1/2 inch off of the chip. So that's able to be used in a tire-derived aggregate. On a small scale, that works. I could give you a painful lecture in tire recycling, but it works well when you got a lot of volume, or you've got something similar to what we're doing. It works okay where it's going to a specific application like an aggregate substitute.
I see.
Yes, sir.
I had another question that was, and I've got a lot of questions. I like your presentation, but I like what your future could be, and I think you hit the nail right on the head. When we first started putting out RFIs and RFPs, we were talking about pieces of a puzzle, and you hit that right on the head. That there's probably going to be pieces to a puzzle here that we're going to try to put together and make Rutherford County the best it can be. Right. So a guy last night with
Designs this.
Jeff Snyder.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I was trying to look for the name here. The
Jeff Snyder
Design-
with
Design
Designs
this. Yes. He threw your name out there, and he was in his RFP. So, are y'all in business together? Would you be in business together on this adventure, or is this kind of like a trades kind of people kind of come together here, and you can help him, he can help you kind of thing?
Yeah, so it's completely separate. So Jeff and I worked together on a couple of projects that he worked on. Jeff actually was part of the group with the City of Lebanon's gasification, and so I will be very transparent with you on what we're doing and why my name's mentioned with a couple of different people. I don't want to say I'm creative, but I'm able to help in the pieces. So where Jeff has the design this and the process, there has to be a feedstock collector and processor. So if you look at where they are going to be really, really strong is putting together this equipment, putting together this plan and this process that's going to work. But in order to do that, one of the main legs of the building, main legs of the foundation is there has to be feedstock collection and processing. And so, no, there is not a partnership where if I was to be chosen to help with a portion of the waste stream, that had to come with a certain waste to energy process. No, sir, not at all. But it absolutely is something that we are able to work with folks and go, okay, this guy right here needs 30 tons of wood a day. Okay, let's pull that out of this stream, let's process it, and let's give them 30 tons. Well, this guy over here needs 50 tons of plastic. All right, perfect. Let's pull that out real quick, and let's give him 50 tons of plastic.
Gotcha. Lincoln, I said that, but hopefully I didn't offend you, and I don't think I did.
No, you didn't offend me at all.
Because I appreciate that. Because
Yes,
I don't want
Not
to
at
get in
all.
any trade secrets or anything
No.
like that, or y'all. But really and truly, it tells me that it takes all of us to get through this world, and y'all just kind of grouped up, and you can help in this piece, and he can help in another piece, and maybe some others can help in another piece. So I appreciate your honesty and telling us about that. Thank you.
Yes, sir, no problem.
So let me add to what Steve said and what Lincoln said. So Steve pointed out that Lincoln's construction and demolition piece may or may not directly affect the residential waste stream. Back to what Commissioner Dodd had asked. But if you think about it, the C&D materials are filling up the landfill space that would take your residential garbage, your residential MSW. So he is indirectly helping allow for or give the option for more airspace that would manage or handle your residential MSW. The other thing he mentioned was LEED certified buildings and other facilities that may be built in your community. And one of the things they've done in Metro Nashville is they have certain requirements for specific size, specific types of organizations or buildings that are being built or remodeled. They are required to be LEED certified. So with LEED certification, you also have to have a certain amount of those materials recycled or diverted from a landfill in order to get that certification for your facility or for your building. And that's basically Green Building Council regulations. And so that's one of the things that Metro Nashville has looked at to help assist and help support pulling construction and demolition debris out of landfill, out of Class 1 landfill space.
Robert, go ahead and jump in. You don't need to, I don't need to recognize you guys tonight.
Right. A couple of our regular meetings ago, you gave me a homework assignment to check on
Yes,
Williamson
for schools.
and Wilson. And when I did, lo and behold, I ran into this guy over the phone. So we had some interesting conversations. I was impressed with what he was doing for especially Wilson County, but also for us. I didn't know the name. I didn't know the companies and what was going on. So I got a pretty good education. So I'll thank you for the homework thing. But having said that, and if I was just listening to your presentation here at Cold Turkey, I'd flip the page and go on to the next person. But having done a little background search, I'm kind of like Steve, it's well worth our time to see what you can do and how we can work together, because I think there's probably going to be pieces regardless of who we go with. There's only 2 companies out there that bid on everything that we put out or responded. That was Republic and right. So, if we don't go with one of them, or even if we did go with one of them, it's still a possibility we'd want to work with this gentleman. He's very reputable from what I've seen from other agencies that have worked with him. So, having said that, now I want to start asking you some questions.
Thank you for the intro, though. Yes, sir.
Well, I wanted it to be known that you and I had some conversations. At the time, I suggested that, I asked him if he had put in for the RFI, RFP, or if he was planning on it. And at the time, he said no, he hadn't decided to. And actually, I tried to encourage him, so I'm not taking blame for that. I appreciate you doing it, though.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so a couple things. First of all is the MRF that you're mentioning. And the way I take it is you would want a partnership with the county on any kind of facility that was developed into a MRF. Is that correct? Or how do you envision a MRF being operated here in the county? Is it a joint venture between us and you, or explain that to me?
On the MRF, I think there would be, let me just, and I'm sorry that I'm not directly answering the question, but I would tell you that I could not run a MRF without the strategic partners that we have, whether that's Pratt, Greif, West Rock, whatever that may be. So I'm saying that to start the conversation to say, I think we would all be in the same boat, because unfortunately, Lincoln doesn't have the paper mills and doesn't have the this and the that. So where I would say on this MRF would be this: if the county said, all right, we want to build a MRF and we need somebody to help us run the thing, yeah, I'd be more than happy to look at that with you. If you said, no, we want to let someone that's bid on a MRF, we don't want to handle trash, we're not in the trash business, we want to let somebody handle a MRF, I would tell you, let's bring in somebody that has got major MRFs across this country. Let's talk to them, let's let them be the experts in that side, and then we're going to help bring those materials to them. We're going to help on some of the hauling and transportation and collections, and we're going to kind of help make sure that this process works. Because the thing that I see on typically what you see on really anything is there always becomes this piece that just gets in the stinking way. And so, it all makes sense on a single stream MRF until you get to the guy that threw the bowling ball in the bin. Somebody's got to be able to handle those things. And so in order for the processes to work, in order for it to be smooth, I think there needs to be a process in that. So do I see myself going out and buying 30 acres of land and building a massive MRF with or without you? No, sir, I don't. But would I be able to be a part of that if there was a need? Absolutely.
Hey, like I said, I've got a list here.
Okay.
You did a good job of explaining. Basically, what I want to know is, basically, what I'm looking at is what our responsibilities would be, and I think it's easier for you to tell me than me to,
Yes.
second guess there. So one thing you said that interested me, and it had to do with grinding the wood, and basically you're processing the ground wood, but you make a note in there that you would expect us to use that vegetation. So what are you talking about? Us taking it and using it to compost, or are you composting it and then we're going to take that product, or how does that work?
So on the wood, basically that is because of our business and really kind of being a portion of the piece, there really wasn't much that I had the ability to come in and give a hard line number on, because there were factors that would come into play. So there was a transportation factor, there was a MRF factor. The only thing I could give a hard line number on is I can grind your wood, and this is the price that I can give you to do that. So if that's at the landfill, and I know the city of Murfreesboro is completely different, but they're processing wood there. If that was during a tornado or emergency response, I can handle that. And so we gave that number. Now, in terms of moving the material, we can typically move anything that you would need us to do. We can move that into mulch applications. We can move that into fuel. We have outlets downstream for all of our wood because we're not a landfill. So everything that comes in has got to be able to go out. In terms of the RFP and getting you a number, because because wood wasn't part of those overall numbers, that's why I didn't put it in there, if I'm being honest. Because there were just, I recognize that the RFP wasn't about wood recycling. So it had some processing in there, but honestly, that's why I gave you a processing number, because wood can be used for compost, it can be used for fuel, it can be used for daily cover, it can be used for cap enclosure. So there's a lot of different applications that are readily available right here in Rutherford County, and that's why there's not a hauling and transportation number with that.
So for this RFP, for today's discussion,
Yes, sir.
maybe other discussions down the road, you're just going to grind it up for us, and we need to figure out what to do with it.
That is, in essence, on the RFP, that's
Okay.
all that's been processed, yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Okay, the last thing I'll I'll ask you about. It's got to do with the rail transfer station. And I'm assuming that part of that would be in conjunction with another entity.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You know, a gasification type business or another MRF. You know, you and I had the discussion, and you told me about the MRF down the interstate a few miles, that someplace we could actually, if we were shut off right now, we could send it to that MRF and get rid of our trash that way. And, you know, I don't remember if you gave me a tonnage cost for rail. It seemed like you did, and I jotted it down somewhere, but don't recall it. But I mean, there's options out there other than us just going and throwing our trash and putting it in the ground.
Right.
But the rail transfer station that you're talking about would be in conjunction with someone else that says, hey, bring us to our facility by rail. So that's what that's all about.
Yes, sir.
All right.
So, I have did you wrap yours up for now, Robert? Okay. So, I appreciate you clarifying the C&D, because, you know, one of our grading things is a contingency option. So I thought, okay, so what happens when, not a matter of if, but when, our glorious housing boom in Rutherford County, when that faucet turns down a little bit and you don't have as much C&D volume? Well, that's really not that big a deal, because that's just a small piece of your proposal. And really, you're just grinding it up for us right now. So it's ours to do with what we wish, put it on trails, turn it into energy, whatever, at some other puzzle piece next door. But municipal waste is the gift that keeps on giving, right? And that's the lion's share of what you're talking about in a proposal is and I'm just trying to make sure, I'm a visual guy, so I have to picture this and run this through my head in segments. We have a MRF or a transfer station. We take our contents from our convenience centers, merge it to, let's say, one spot, maybe close to the rail. You sort it, take what's of value, and then you bundle the rest up, package it, put it on a rail, and take it to wherever. Yeah. That's the gist of it. Yes. Sounds pretty simple. Yeah. I'm maybe making it harder in my head than it really is.
That with waste, unfortunately, that happens all the time. I do it every day, okay. So you're okay.
All right. All right.
So the property that we have on Florence Road, that is adequate enough for your needs?
It is for the transfer side. Now, if I'm not going to tell you that that's adequate if you were to try to put a bunch of different operational pieces together, but in terms of bringing the trucks in, whether that's from the convenience center straight or whether that's from the MRF that comes, the residuals come in, it is plenty of room for the trucks come in and out, for them to be for that material to be processed through, compacted, and put on a car. Yes, sir. It's plenty of room.
And Becky, can you tell me how much C&D the number was again? Was it 740,000 tons?
It's 750,000 tons in Middle Tennessee.
Do we know what it is in Rutherford County?
Not off the top of my head, but I can get you the number.
Okay. So you can handle Rutherford County?
Yes, sir.
And all at C&D with all the building and everything going on?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Lincoln, one more question while other folks are getting ready. Would you need a building to house the separation process? Mainly, I'm thinking odor. Odor's a hot topic in Rutherford County. How do we contain? I would think a building would be the best way to do that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, especially on that property, and that's one of, could be different other options. But that I know that property is owned by the county at the moment, so, which makes it very appealing. It's right on the side of the road. It's going to need to look pretty. On the outside, it's going to need to look nice. It's not going to need to look like an old pole barn. It's going to need, you're probably looking at least 3 or 4 stories in terms of height wise, just because you're going to need some height inside the building to get trucks in and out. But quite honestly, I think where you're going to fill up a little bit of that property is you're going to need to make it look, it's going to need to look nice. There's too much traffic, there's too much exposure there. So everything needs to be under roof, with the exception of at some point that rail car is going to have to come outside, and then it's going to need to go in a line. And so basically how that works is you have one spur that is working a couple of cars in and out of the building, so that you're working those in, a door drops down, you fill that up, move another one in, kind of work at that place. And then you're going to bring those out, set them in a line, and then when the big train comes by, it grabs those 10 or 15 cars that you have ready, and off it goes. So yes, sir, I would propose that the majority of that facility is going to need to be under roof.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in your mind, in the perfect world, this piece of property, you've envisioned staging 15 cars for a few days, or whatever, whatever the route may be.
Yes, sir. In just kind of high-level look,
Yeah.
but still measuring, doing what you can on satellite imagery and stuff like that. There's enough space where you can put at least 40 cars in a line. So you're going to have some that are getting loaded, and you're going to have some empty, ready to get loaded. But you can put about 4 10-car spaces right in that area.
Okay.
So there would be enough room. So that's where the majority, so when you talk about the 20 acres, the majority of it will be, there's a lot of headroom that's needed on the rail side. So can't really necessarily be in a curve. You've got to have a little bit of space there, but you have to have the ability to get those cars off that main track and staged, and you're going to have some that'll be loaded. So,
all right, those loaded cars that are in waiting, in line, are they closed containers? Are they open top?
They're closed. So you're looking at about a 12-foot high cube, and then there's a roof that goes over them.
Okay. So again, not knowing, but I have to ask the question. In June, high humidity, 100 degrees, what's the odor going to be like out there?
So, with any waste, I knew that there would be an odor. The fact that the cars would be moving every day is going to eliminate the majority of that.
Okay.
If you have something that's really high odor as it goes in, again, if it's moving, it's going to be very temporal, but there isn't, they're not, the cars, when the roof goes on, it's going to sequester most of that, but there probably will have, there could have some odor problems.
Right.
It's not going to smell like cookies, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I wish it would.
Right. So from an economic standpoint, you mentioned cars would be moving every day. So from your point of view, from a money-making point of view, it costs just as much to latch one car onto the main train as it does 15.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So you want them constantly moving.
Yeah, they wouldn't.
You don't get a
If
bulk
it's
discount.
just one, we'll have more problems than if we had 15 or 20. In all honesty, it's a volume game with them. So yes, there would. On that side, I think we'd have to have some deeper conversations in terms of bulk discount. Honestly, when it comes to rail pricing, CSX and those guys, we just, you kind of have to do what they say.
Yeah.
So if I'm being very honest.
Sure. Okay. Back.
You're talking about the odor. Part of the odor may not be there. If you've got that actual household trash, the kitchen trash going elsewhere, and your more wood waste and stuff like that, and then your odors are a whole lot different. Yeah. And then your storage capacities and things like that would be a little bit different too. On a rail car, how much do they carry?
So a rail car is going to carry the volume of about 5 of your transfer trailers. So you're looking at about 100 tons. The big key with rail is we have to be able to get those things packed heavy. So with the C&D and stuff, that's where, quite honestly, I wouldn't tell you we're just, there's probably going to be a shredding portion of it, of being able to densify those loads so they can get heavy. With MSW, that actually helps because it's heavier material. But you can hold about 100 tons in a car, and it's about 100 cubic yards. So a capacity in each car. I think I'm doing my math right there. Maybe 125, since it's 25. No. All right, I'm completely wrong. 100 yards in a semi, and it's 5 times. It's 500 yards. I'm sorry. Yeah, my bad. I was thinking weight in tons and doing conversion in my head, and that's not smart.
So Commissioner Harris, back to your question about tonnage. In 2019, it was 27,588 tons of C&D that was generated in Rutherford County.
The questions this committee's always had is, and a lot of the response from our citizens, is anything going to be brought in from other counties? So that's why I'm asking you, do we have enough to sustain you for what you need to do?
Well, let's see, on MSW and C&D?
Yes.
Quite honestly, I think we have to look at the tonnage, but we need to be able to move 1,000 tons a day. To make it effective on a rail, we need to be able to move at least 1,000 tons a day. So there has to be the ability to bring in some of our municipalities. Now, you bring in some of the municipalities, though, you just mentioned 330,000 people at a ton a day. That's 1,000 tons a day. So that's really the capacity that we need to be able to be at. On the rail side, that's where you kind of get into those numbers. I mean, because of the extreme expense that you have in that, that's where your capacity on a daily basis needs to be. So I would tell you yes, with the caveat of if for some reason it was a county, but that there wasn't municipalities involved or something of that nature, quite honestly, we would have to look at saying, okay, how do we get that volume? Because we would need, in order to be able to service the debt, to service the cost, we would need to be able to move about 1,000 tons a day.
Well, one of the things that we have with the current landfill that we deal with is they're bringing in a lot of trash from other counties. All right, we charge them a host fee.
Right.
Would you object to us charging you a host fee if you bring in other counties' trash?
No, I wouldn't object to that.
One other question that came to mind is you didn't check off on education.
Yes, sir.
I kind of find that a little disappointing, and the reason being because you're such a good resource for the education, and I'd like for you to mention, some of your affiliations with waste throughout the state. He actually told me, my daughter, of course, one of my daughters is with Recycle Rutherford, and he made me aware of some of the grants that are available and passed that on to her. But anyway, he's a great resource. So if you don't mind mentioning
absolutely,
that,
don't mind at all.
And why you're kind of shying away from education, I kind of want to know why on that.
Well, so on the education side, first off, I absolutely love hanging out with people that want to learn about recycling, want to learn about sustainability, want to learn about how to move materials. It's something that I love and am passionate about and enjoy talking about. In that, I'm currently serve as the president of the Tennessee Recycling Coalition, which is a nonprofit recycling coalition that works with our schools and works with our counties, works with our industry to help educate in recycling. What I should have done, Commissioner P., is I should have had the Tennessee Recycling Coalition present an RFP for education. Quite honestly, I would tell you that I think that through the resources that they possess, through partnerships they have with the Recycling Partnership and a lot of these nonprofit recycling companies, they've got stuff that quite honestly, they have programs where we could go in and type in the word Rutherford County, and it would produce us the majority of what we need to pass out to residents in a very well documented, well marketed flyers and things of that nature. It's just not really, because we don't have the marketing department, because we don't have the public outreach side. That's why I didn't go into that, because again, we are a little more boots on the ground with equipment, with heavy equipment and processing, material moving type applications. That said, yes, I can more than happy to be a resource in the limited knowledge that I know, but we do spend a great deal of time working with our solid waste directors and our organizations across the county to try to educate not only county officials, county mayors, worked with Tennessee County Services on some things of that nature, our solid waste directors, but also try to provide education and training to other nonprofits. So in itself as Rockwood Sustainable Solutions, quite honestly, I feel like we've got some really talented nonprofits that would be fantastic at the education piece. Yes, sir.
Lincoln, one more question. Organics. We haven't talked about organics. Does that do anything for you, or how would you handle those?
So the short answer would be, in transportation, it can all go in the same spot. The long answer is organics is one of those materials that is pretty easy to make into a good end product. I mean, compost takes up a lot of land, but it makes a pretty good product, especially in limestone country. I always make the joke that where we are in Middle Tennessee, I could drill down in this floor and I'd be in a rock quarry. Compost is very much needed in our area. So again, an encouragement side of that is to say, let's look at some options where we could use that locally. If we can't, yes, we could put it in something and we could transport it out of here. But that's where on the organics, I believe, with bringing in wood, with having options to process that material, having options to bring some of our food waste and stuff of that nature. Again, it kind of goes back to the piece of the puzzle. My recommendation would be, let's try that. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, if we can't get the right players or the right people on the bench, then let's have an option to do something else so that we make sure that we don't get ourselves in a spot where we don't have a solution. So, really it's opening up those options to be able to look at it. So, okay. Yes, sir.
Very good. Any more questions for Lincoln? Mac?
When you talk about wood waste, tree debris wood waste, what do you do with the great big stumps?
We grind them.
Dirt and all? So
a single shaft shredder, I haven't seen it stop at anything yet. But quite honestly, I mean, I've seen stuff go through our horizontal grinders that I never thought would come out the other end, and after just a couple of minutes they do. So where I saw that was in Tornado. We had stumps, we had all kinds of stuff, and every bit of it went through. So I'm not saying that we wouldn't meet a stump we couldn't master, but typically, if we can't, we're breaking it up with an excavator. They make these really cool tools on an excavator that kind of drill them out, and it just busts into a couple of different pieces where we're able to take that and throw it in. But there's equipment that typically will handle them. So we're not. If we're going to say, if I'm going to come to you and say I'm going to take wood, I'm not going to look at you and say, well, I'll take pine, but I won't take birch. If it's wood, it's wood. So, yes, sir, we'd be able to handle it if it's going to come in.
Mr. Chairman, in my mind, their piece of the puzzle seems to be saving airspace in a landfill, that you're taking all the bulk items and reprocessing them or relocating them for another use, because we found out after 2 years of study there is no process that takes the landfill completely out of the equation.
I agree.
At some point, there has to be some sort of landfill, but you just seem to process the bulk stuff that takes care of the airspace too.
Yes, sir.
I have two quick questions because Steve didn't bring them up. So you mentioned that you helped Wilson County with tornado debris. So speak to what the contingency plan is for helping with both disaster debris management or debris management, as well as what do you do when one site or one piece of equipment is down? How do you continue operating? And then the other is just customer service in general and how you handle it.
Okay. So the emergency response. So we have on our facility now, we have a emergency response clause where basically we're able to be a site for the initial material to come in. What we did is we've worked with our county, and each county, as you guys know, needs to have collection locations. And so we are one of those collection locations. The way it's written for us is when we cry mercy, it goes to the phase 2 collection location. At that point, we can typically mobilize equipment through, whether it's myself doing it with equipment that we own or partners that we have. And a lot of times what we've done is we've established networks across the country. And I'm serious when I say that. We've worked with folks in Iowa as well as down in Florida, because typically an emergency event's not going to hit us all. So we've brought in, a lot of times what we'll do in occasions like that is we'll start making phone calls. And we're going to bring in our, what I call partners or strategic partners. I don't have an ownership in them. It's the gentleman's handshakes agreements, but we're going to bring those guys in to help and be able to move the materials. And so that's what we've done in an emergency response situation. In terms of, Becky, remind me, second question.
Customer service.
Customer service. So customer service is honestly what we've built our business on. From the moment that we started the shingle business, I printed out flyers, and I remember the first time I went to and met Mac, brought a dozen donuts to the landfill and some flyers, because we wanted to make sure that when the county decided to trust us to take the shingles from your landfill, that we weren't going to upset residents and that we weren't going to upset the current roofers in this market. So what we did is we showed up, we had flyers, we had directions, we had literature that got them from there to us. I think it took a week for most, maybe a month for everybody before they were coming to our place with shingles. Absolutely loved it. They were able to get in and out within 5-10 minutes. We were able to pull them off. If you don't know what that means, basically what it is a lot of guys will have shingles on a trailer, and then you have to hook a chain to it to pull those shingles off. Most of the time, liability reasons, a lot of people don't do that at landfills because it can be a little hairy at times. But anyways, we were able to. So we want to be good neighbors, and so that's just one example, but it worked. And so we kind of try to be just down to earth, set the expectation, and be honest. In our hauling business, we do the same thing right now. If we can get there tomorrow, we're going to tell you. If it's going to be on Friday or Saturday, we're going to tell you that when you call me. It's really just trying to pick up the phone, answer the phone, be able to provide that customer service for the client, for the customer, for the county, for the municipalities. So right now, that's where we put a lot of focus, is being able to just meet those needs. So, I don't have a 3-step plan. I try to be really honest with people, and I try to tell them up front if I can't do anything, and that's really our customer service. We've got some really good people on our team that sort of fill in the gaps when I fail too. That helps a lot. Was there another? I felt like there was 3.
Equipment issues, okay. If you have
equipment issues. Okay, so equipment issues. Equipment is always breaking, always going down. Got to have backups. or got to have ways to do things while something's getting fixed. So that's just the nature of it. When an excavator goes down, you need to be able to rent or get an excavator within a few hours, or you need to have one setting on the site. So that would be kind of our plan in that. You mentioned it, Commissioner Cush, that the MSW is the gift that keeps on giving, and you couldn't have stated it any better. It never stops. So you have to have the ability to bring in stuff. And as I mentioned, you know, if a grinder goes down, we're going to get another one. If that one goes down, we're going to call somebody and say, hey, you know, we work, you know, there's competition in our market. There's competition at different landfills. But a lot of times us guys, we're working together because we know that, like, if something goes down over here, I may need you over here. And so we do a lot of that on not a daily basis, but it feels like it a lot of times. Equipment's it's always breaking.
I've got a couple of questions. Did you have any involvement in handling any of the Nashville flood waste just a few weeks ago?
Nashville flood? Yep. No, sir. We helped on a small scale in Lebanon, Lebanon Square. Took on some water, as it unfortunately does a lot of times. We helped a lot of the residents there. But no, sir, I don't really have much of a presence in Metro at the moment.
Do you have any ability to do anything with our C&D landfill that we have today?
In terms of digging it up and processing it?
Yes.
I could probably get some people in here that might have experience with that, but no, sir, I do not. Again, could I be a piece to help with some of that in the plan? Maybe, but unfortunately, no, sir, I don't have the knowledge or know-how to come in and excavate that. I mean, sure, I could get some people involved, but that's not something we've done, no, sir.
From what I've gathered from your presentation, your main line is grinding, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I can see where that would be useful for us, but
Sure.
a mention of a MRF sparked Mr. P because he likes that, but I just drew that you were grinding and probably had help, you know, other partners or something, but your main thing is grinding C&D, right?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I really enjoy your presentation, and also you mentioned, you know, the shingles and everything else. You look like you have a lot of knowledge in the area.
Thank you.
You work with the county within the Middle Tennessee, or just all in the county here in Tennessee?
Do I live here?
No, I mean you have some connection with a lot of counties. You
Yes,
said.
sir.
Uh-huh.
Yes, sir. So our connections have really just been, you know, as I mentioned at the beginning, when we first started, we were a LoJack company. LoJack owns property in the area, and they sold their asphalt grading and paving divisions to Vulcan, but they still own property in the area. So our connections were really tied with them, and then just having that working relationship with the county on moving, you know, that initial waste stream, which was shingles. So yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gentlemen, if you'll turn, if you brought your Rockwood RFP, page 9, and I don't know if Becky or Steve handed out the cost per, okay. That's pulled from page 9 from their RFP. You'll see around a $6.50 a cubic yard for grinding of the vegetation, and adding a $3.50 per cubic yard to haul off materials. And then you'll see a range of a transportation of the cost per ton, $50 to $125 a ton, which is a range that we'd have to nail down depending on a lot of different variables. Right. So nothing we can really throw a dart at yet and get a hard number, but it gives you a range. So a lot of moving parts yet to be determined. So
there are.
Any other questions for Lincoln?
Give you a refresher on what grinding can do for you. The 2009 tornado that hit here. We took in, at our landfill, we took in the home debris in one area. We took in a place where we could burn stuff because we burn at the landfill, and then we took in good, clean tree debris. And we wound up with a pretty good sized pile. There's a little over 3,000 tons of tree debris in it, and we tried to go, find every grinding company in the area. So we had to put it out for bid. We took all that stuff in at $30 a ton, and we paid $17 a ton for them to grind it up and haul it out. But it did not get buried in our landfill. So we wound up making money off of it and sending it somewhere else. It wound up going as boiler fuel is what it went for.
Yep.
One more. So, Lincoln, you were talking about 30, let's see, wait a minute. $6.50 a yard, a cubic yard. So one of those blue ones is like a 30-yard container?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Be about $195 a container of C&D.
Yes, the way wood works, especially if we're talking about vegetation, is there's kind of some metrics that FEMA put into place, and we use that a lot of times as well, but there's a lot of air in a 30-yard dumpster full of green wood. So if the thing was compacted down really tight, yes, you would be there. Majority of the time, though, what we typically do is that's on the yard as it comes out, which is going to alleviate a lot of the air that you would typically see in a 30. And I may be getting too deep in the weeds there, but to answer your question direct, yes, that would be what you'd be looking at on cost. But if we're talking about grinding materials, typically we want to do that as it's moving off the belt, just so you're not paying for air.
Well, as the mayor says over and over, it's not our money. It's the taxpayers. It's our citizens of Rutherford County. So, no, we need to get down in the weeds on that, because $6.50 a cubic yard, if we bring it to you, it comes from our convenience center, say, and we bring it there. If we don't smash it and try to get as much in there as we can get, you know what we're talking about there, that smash it thing that we're doing. 30 yards, I mean, it's going to basically be charged $195.
Yes, sir.
And all of those are not going to be smashed, so it's going to be a lot of air.
So what I kind of envisioned there on the Greenwood was not necessarily that you would haul that to Lebanon, but maybe have a facility here where you are bringing that material, and then we're processing that, so that rate would be kind of on its way out. So again, as we look through some of those numbers, as you look at the different scenarios and figuring out, okay, where are we going to put this? Where's the land going to be? That's where some of that has got to fall into place. But to answer you, if you were hauling that material to me in Lebanon in a 30-yard, I think we would quickly want to see if we could find a piece of property around here where we weren't doing that. But if that was the case, the way that was bid was basically as the material is processed and moved out. So we would want to adjust that as the really as the workflow adjusted. So if you said, we don't want to do that, we want to bring it to you in a 30-yard, I'm going to need to have an honest conversation with you and tell you, I won't be able to charge you that rate. That's not competitive. It just, so it changes based on how it's the approach and how it's coming. But the way that the RFP was written was, we would show up to a property, or we would host a property where that material was brought in, and then as it's going out of the grinder, that's where your yardage is coming from, which is about 2/3 less than what it is on the way in, because you're getting a huge amount of, you're getting at least a 60-70% compaction difference as it's coming out of the machine.
I'm sorry, I got that, but I don't know how in the world you keep up with it. Because if you've got a bunch of trailers coming in and dumping, they're going across the check-in point. There goes so-and-so with a 30-yard, $195. There goes so-and-so with a 30-yard, $195. Somebody else comes in, They're all just dumping. We're going to get a bill at the end of the month. And it's going to be $195 per 30-yard container that we bring in there and dump. You see what I'm saying?
I do see what you're saying, yes.
Yeah.
So that's not how I'd written the RFP. So the RFP, the way I'd written it was, I'm showing up to a pile of material that you've collected and we're processing it. So if we are handling the collections of each individual one of those 30 yards, we'd have to look at the pricing, and again, quite honestly, $650 is not the number that would ultimately be that case. So I absolutely see what you're saying. That's not how I had written that up. It was more of the grinding was being able to process materials in a facility that you had or a collection site that you had there. So I apologize for the lack of clarity there.
Craig, did you have?
No.
Okay.
Anything else, John? All right, Mayor, did you have any comment?
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
For your time and effort.
We meet tomorrow night. That's 2 dozen donuts. There's 21 of us.
Okay, all right. Sounds like a plan. That, we might can make that happen, yes, sir. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Lincoln. Why don't we take a 5-minute break and we'll reset for Waste Away.
Just kidding.
Yeah, Lincoln, just kidding, by the way, on the donuts. Yeah.
I wasn't going to be kidding.
Yeah. Waste away. You have 15 minutes to do your set your clock. Yeah. No, yeah. You guys take your time. We're here for you. So you take as long as you want. No, Lincoln was a pretty tall fella. Yeah, that's right. That's right. You may be talking alone, but you take as long as you want. If you would introduce yourself for the record and then jump right in.
I'm Mark Brown. I'm the CEO of Waste Away. Know most of you because I've seen most of you at the plant at one time or another through the years with various tours and things we've done, and certainly appreciate the continued interest in Rutherford County. I'm going to kind of go through a quick presentation, just hitting some highlights of some points I thought you might want to refresh your memory on. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking in detail about our technology because I think most of you visited the plant, you're familiar with what we do.
And then try to leave some time for questions, and hopefully we can all be home before midnight tonight. So as we talk about, what can Waste Away do for Rutherford County, and as you see on our brochure that's shown up there, the beginning of the end for landfills is one of our marketing slogans, and that really is the goal for Waste Away. We started out working with the U.S. military, and the whole purpose and the technology we were developing was to end the need for landfills. And as somebody, I'm not sure who it was, somebody correctly commented during Lincoln's presentation, we're not there yet. We can get very close, but there's currently still a need for a small amount of material to go to landfills, but we can get that down to about 10%. So 90% of what's now going to landfills, we can do something beneficial with. And Lincoln, I loved his presentation. I think he's left, so I'll give him a plug anyway. He can watch it on TV tomorrow. But there's a big need for something like what Lincoln was proposing with the C&D and the storm debris and grinding the wood, even though that may not be in the center of the RFP and what you were asking for, as I understood it. Those are all responsibilities for proper waste collection, and whether the county's doing those or whether right now that's being done by third parties, it's part of the county's responsibility to be sure you have that capacity in the county. So what Lincoln was offering is a piece, as he said, of a solution that's needed. Waste Away's a piece as well, or we see ourselves as that, and we're focused on the piece that really is kind of in the heart of your RFP. We're focused on processing municipal solid waste, whether it's coming in packer trucks, whether it's coming from convenience centers and dumpsters. That's the waste that we're focused on is household waste. And so, some of the key things that we'll be offering in our proposal as we discuss it, obviously the landfill diversion. Like I said, we want to keep everything out of the landfills we possibly can. Green power, as we've talked, and I've done this presentation a number of times for different groups in Rutherford County, but clearly green power, not only is it the right thing to do for the environment, but it's also a good industrial recruitment tool. It's a lot of industry now is demanding green power before they'll come to a community. It's a proven technology. You've been there, you've seen it run, you know we've been operating in Warren County for close to 2 decades now, so there's no question we can operate the equipment and produce the fuel that we produce. Financial feasibility, we'll talk about that in a little more detail in a minute. And one thing that I think what I have heard from some of the commissioners that have visited the plant and from citizens in the community, taking back local control and having the county commission really in control of what's going on in this county rather than having large companies dictate what's going to happen and bringing waste in and other things they may do that perhaps you wish you had more control over. So real quickly, next slide please. Like I said, I'm not going to talk about our process a lot because most of you have seen it. If you haven't, by all means, see me after the meeting and we'll arrange a tour. Be glad to have another group come down and look at what we do. We're taking 100% of the waste coming from the convenience centers, so it's the same types of things you see in the dumpsters here. Anything that households can hide in a black plastic bag, it goes in a dumpster and it shows up at our place. And it doesn't matter if it's an animal carcass or a bowling ball or a tractor transmission. We've seen it all. And as we process the waste, I've heard you talking about MRFs a lot tonight, and that's really what we are. We're a MRF. We're going to use automated equipment to dig through that waste. We do not have a picking line, so you're not going to see 20 prisoners in orange jumpsuits picking through the waste. Everything's highly automated. We operate our facility in Warren County with just 3 people, and so we're using, magnets, eddy currents, shredders, grinders, air classifiers, wet densifiers, infrared to capture the plastics. So those are the things we're doing there. Always, next slide, I'm sorry.
That's all right. No, you're good.
I need a button up here. Always a good neighbor, and Waste Away prides itself in being a good neighbor. We're located in an industrial park. Once again, you've been there, you've seen us, there's no odors, there's no noise. We have a Japanese auto parts manufacturer next to us, and we get along just fine and work together on some things. All the material is handled indoors. We maintain negative pressure to keep any odors inside our building. If there's a need for a drop-off center, that could be integrated into the facility, but that would just be on the grounds. It wouldn't be something that's really part of our facility. Next slide. And as we talk about fuel and we talk about some of the conversations we've had with Rutherford County over the years, I would say probably the biggest concern I've heard voiced from some of the commissioners in the past is, what are we going to do with the fuel? If we don't have a home for the fuel, then the waste away process is, like a 3-legged stool with 1 leg missing. And so with the fuel, we now have the EPA certification as a non-waste fuel. That means facilities using our fuel will not be classified as an incinerator. Most communities do not want waste incinerators, and so facilities using our fuel are not considered solid waste incinerators by either the state of Tennessee or by the federal government. And most likely, what we have proposed here in Rutherford County is going to be a simple solution, and that would be a small power plant that uses the fuel we're producing here in the county, and that could either be in conjunction with an industrial customer. But I would suggest, if I were the county commission, I would want to look at the county using the power they're producing, and that way you have a totally closed circuit. You're providing the waste, you're using the fuel, you're not worried about an industrial plant that closes and leaves the community. You're always going to need electricity for various county activities. So, you're in complete control of what you're doing, and that's really going to be the most efficient and effective way of doing it. I will add, I've spent most of the day today talking to communities on the West Coast. We've got a lot of projects out there right now because of new regulations that they're imposing. And even in the state of California, which has some of the strongest environmental regulations in the nation, we are not considered an incinerator in the state of California even. So our fuel is acceptable for not being an incinerator there. The other thing that's real important as we talk about, like I said, you've got to have a home for the fuel, but the other things, you want to be sure you're choosing a proven technology when you're talking about waste. Waste is always coming in. I heard one of the commissioners mention that earlier. It keeps coming whether you're ready for it or not, so you've got to have proven technologies to deal with the waste. You've been to our plant, you've seen how the waste away part of the equipment works. You know it's been working for years. adding to our team. We've recently, well, I say recently, he's been there almost 2 years now. We've recently added David Palmer as our new Vice President of Engineering. David has personally overseen $1.8 billion in waste energy plant construction. He was project manager of the Palm Beach waste energy facility in Florida that was built several years ago, which is still seen as one of the models in waste energy. I believe some of you may have visited the facility in Huntsville, the waste energy facility there. He was project manager and one of the lead designers in that project as well. So he brings a lot of additional new expertise to the Waste Away team on the power side. But then beyond our own, let's see, did we skip a slide or did I lose one there, Becky? Yeah.
Maybe ahead of you one.
That's okay. Hearst Boiler would be the boiler manufacturer of choice. We've included a letter in the addendum, I guess, to our package from them indicating that they've tested our fuel. They will certify that they can use our fuel and make the steam from the fuel. Once you have steam, it's very easy to go to electricity, obviously. They have over 4,000 operating gasifiers and power systems around the world. If you want to load up a bus, we can go see power plants for days on end that use the Hearst boilers, even close by. So Hearst is located in Georgia. It's U.S.-made equipment. The Waste Away equipment is U.S.-made equipment. We're not importing a lot of fancy equipment from Europe or low-priced equipment from China or some of those locations. It's American-made equipment. We're also working, next slide now, with ESI. ESI was actually founded in Chattanooga, but they've now moved to the Marietta area just out of Atlanta. And once again, they bring a tremendous amount of engineering expertise in building the power plants and being sure they meet both the environmental regulations and the operational considerations. And as you'll see in the attached letter from them, they've indicated for the prototypical plant we've proposed that we could get about 12 megawatts of power from that plant. Next slide. In this slide, if you'll notice the colors are a little different or whatever, it's a little out of place. The reason is I went back and pulled a slide from a 2017 presentation that we did to the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, I think, that the county had a few years back. And one reason I wanted to pull this slide back up was to show you the numbers haven't changed, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, I'm not trying to raise prices or lower prices. Facts are facts, and I believe I'm telling it like it is. And we're still looking around a $75 million capital budget if you're going to do both a waste away processing plant and a power station. We can get about 12 megawatts of power out of that. $40 per ton tip fee. I think in our proposal we bracketed it between 36 and 50, but still roughly the same price for the tip fee. That's right in the middle there. We have been able to increase our capacity at that capital budget. We have been able to, but through some efficiency and new designs that David's helped us with, we can process up to 400 tons per day at that capital number now, so there would be either some growth capacity there, or if you wanted to bring in some other communities within Rutherford County, you would have that opportunity to participate in the project. One of the things I believe, and this is your decision, but I strongly believe, based on all the civic groups that have come to Warren County from Rutherford County to see our plant, Rutherford County needs to focus on a project that handles garbage from in Rutherford County. Every citizen group that we've spoken to has told us they're tired of having waste imported from Nashville or all over Middle Tennessee into Rutherford County. And so by right-sizing a plant, we can process as much of the waste in Rutherford County that you choose to do. We can leave room for growth in the future, but at the same time be a local solution that does not require importing a lot of waste. Next one. This one, like I said, controlling your own destiny, I think is something that should be important in your decision. I know some 35 years ago, some of your predecessors made somewhat of a Faustian bargain and agreed to build a large landfill or allowed it to be constructed in exchange for low tipping fees and some host fees. And originally, as I understand from newspaper articles, that was supposed to be for local waste, but it was kind of a Trojan horse. As soon as it got built, BFI at the time, which became Allied, which became Republic, used it as a Trojan horse to come in and suddenly start importing a lot of waste and made it a lot bigger than perhaps your predecessors envisioned when they agreed to that landfill. And, while I appreciate not just this commission, but many commissions that have visited us before you, trying to untangle that problem. One of the problems you have is when you get that free tipping fee or very low-cost tipping fee, it's very difficult to make a more responsible decision because it's more money. And if there's anything I've learned, politicians always want to do the best thing for the environment, the best thing for the citizens, and one of the best things you can do is not raise taxes. And so that's always got to be a very important part of any decision you make is being efficient and cost-effective. But at the same time, I think the citizens, at least that we've heard from in Rutherford County, they're tired of being a dumping ground for Middle Tennessee and would like to see that changed. So our proposal, no need to import any garbage, as I've already said. Produce green power, and my suggestion would be using that green power for county purposes. You would have complete local control over what you're doing, and it is a sustainable waste solution. We're using all of this material in a proper way. We're capturing any recyclable materials that make sense in this local market and seeing that they're properly used, and then making power out of the balance. And perhaps it might be good for me to stop for questions at this point, and we can talk a little bit more then about the way we structured our proposal. But let me stop and take some questions, if that would be in order, Mr. Chairman, about the technology, about what we've proposed, about the types of waste we can process, and
got a question, Mark.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we last made our trip, several of us came up to visit, and you gave us a nice tour and fed us lunch. Thank you. And you had just gotten word that Department of Environment was giving you the green light on burning your product in some boilers. Could you? How's that going, and go into a little bit more depth on what's happening with U.S. Department of Environment?
Okay, yeah. With the U.S. EPA, I think I had a slide a minute ago that talked about we had that certification now. We've had to work with the various states where we have projects going to, even with federal certification, you then have to have the states to concur.
And have you talked to TDEC here?
TDEC will not be a problem. Yes, okay. TDEC will not be a problem at all. Alabama is actually encouraging people to consider our process. The state of Florida is encouraging, not just allow, to the extent they can. I mean, sure. You understand there are limits to what they can do, but they are strongly recommending this as something that should be considered. We're working, I've been on the phone most of the day today and a lot of the day yesterday with communities in California. We have one of them that's actually in a phased study proposal, as we'll talk about in a minute, and that's where they are. Is they actually have a cement kiln in their community, so they're going to be rather than a power plant, they're going to be using it in a cement kiln. But the process is the same. Obviously, you're using a gasifier, a cement kiln, or a boiler, and either making electricity or cement or heat. And so once we had the fuel approved as a non-incinerator, it's kind of opened doors for us on several of these projects.
If we couldn't identify a facility to send that power to. You don't see a problem in selling it back to the grid?
Actually, since we met at the plant, TVA has actually changed some of their rules, or more accurately, I guess, are in the process, maybe I should turn around, I don't know, are in the process of changing some of their rules. And so they have a new program that's in the process of being rolled out that will allow community power projects for green power, and they will actually allow the local utility, in this case that would be Middle Tennessee, to wheel that power to local customers. And so it's a small amount. I think it's limited to 5 or 10%. Like I said, the final regs are not completely issued. Sure. But they will be able to wheel that power, so it would be possible for us to build a power plant probably near one of their existing substations, and then that power could be distributed to county schools, to your sewer plant, to your water plant, wherever you chose to use it. The other opportunity, it could be distributed to your industrial park and used to entice industry to come to the community that require green power. Okay. So that's a new development. And other questions?
First, Craig, and then Robert.
Okay.
I got a couple of questions, and my first one is, and I need you to do step by step, what is it that you expect from the county? So tell me what you expect us to do if we decide to do a partnership with you.
Okay. And I'm not, there's a two-part answer to that, I guess. And I'll go into more specifics in a minute on what we have proposed in the way of a study, because what I'm recommending to minimize cost and risk both for the county and for Waste-Away is a phased approach where we start with a small study doing what we call a conceptual phase, and then a feasibility phase, and eventually the design phase where we design the full plant. And then from if you're asking what I think you're asking more from how would the actual project be structured, we can do the full gamut. We can go from a county-owned facility where we provide equipment and we provide initial supervision and training, all the way to an investor-owned merchant facility where we bring all of the financing, and all we would be asking for is a commitment of the waste to the facility. The difference in those two ends up being $15 to $20 per ton on your tip fee, as we've indicated in our proposal. And that is based on hard numbers that we've developed on projects that have already done this study in California and Washington State and other places on the West Coast. So those aren't just numbers I made up. And what most okay.
All right, so I get the study, and I'm going to imagine that study is going to be somewhere around 40 grand.
The first part of the study is $50,000, yes.
So that's one. A commitment of waste. Okay, that's not a problem on us, but then you said you got to add $10 to $20 more per tip. So that's where I'm lost.
Okay. 2 or 3 ways we can structure this project. One way would be a county-owned and operated facility. That's the lowest cost to the ratepayers of the county, but one can argue that would be the highest risk because obviously you're putting money into the facility. On the opposite end of the scale, another option we can offer would be, and let's use some numbers with that. At that, with a county-owned facility, you can look at a tipping fee around $40 per ton. We bracketed it 36 to 50 because there is still some variability with where we are today. But let's say $40 a ton.
And that's with us providing land and capital for the building?
No. Yes, that would be land, capital, you're going to own and operate would be $40 per ton. The opposite end of the spectrum would be all you do is sign a long-term contract to provide the waste at a fixed fee. And that is going to be, like I said, $15 to $20, so that's going to be $55 to $60 for your tip fee in that scenario. And in that scenario, third parties would raise the financing, third parties would buy the equipment, third parties would buy the land. They'd do everything. All you've got to do is agree to pay the tip fee for the waste you deliver to our facility. And in between, we can do some kind of partnership where maybe the county contributes some land, maybe the county has some ownership, some percentage.
We can mix it.
We
don't have
can
to
mix
be
it.
one or
We can
the
go
other.
somewhere in the middle as well. But those are kind of brackets, bookends, if you will, on either side.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Now, you want to go, Robert? I got about 3 questions.
Commissioner Harris, if you'll look at the bottom of page 4 of the summary that I gave you, you'll see project structure at the bottom.
Talking about on preliminary design? Okay, got you. My thing is, I just want to make sure we can modify this into parts where it ain't this or just that.
And that's exactly why what we proposed was a study, because I believe the way that we will come up with the best solution for Rutherford County is for us to work with the county commission and with your solid waste department, possibly bring in the city of Murfreesboro or other entities that you choose to bring into the project, and put together a right-sized facility to meet your needs. And then we can talk about, what's the best way to operate it, what's the best way to finance it. There are grants that may be available for part of this, so let's optimize the process. And so that's why we proposed entering into a study to help you do that and come up with the right answer.
So how much time do you need to start business? So if we made a deal today, when will you go and operate? When will you go and start?
Typical construction and permitting phase is 2 years. So if we were at a point we could sign a contract today, we could be up and running in 2 years.
Does that include all the permitting that's required?
That's what I said, construction and permitting. Okay. In the state of Tennessee, permitting is not going to be particularly onerous on this.
How long will the studies take?
Studies, a little bit of that will depend on the county, obviously, because there is a give and take in that process, but you're probably looking at 9 months realistically. I mean,
So
we could do our side, so really you're looking at 3 years if we start the process. Mm-hmm. And gentlemen, I could give you more rosy scenarios, but that's really how long I think it'll take to get through it.
The mayor kind of touched on this, and the question I've got, and the same thing, we've had TVA come in here and talk to us, and we actually had a presentation yesterday where they talked about the amount of money that they get for kilowatt hours. We were talking about 2 cents is what they buy in for green energy, and that's a good thing, but I've actually got I've looked at this and what our electrical costs are in this county, and just say ballpark, our schools are costing us about $10 million a year just for electricity. And it intrigues me if we can generate power and feed it to our schools and our facilities. If you put our public buildings like this courthouse, our courtrooms, our court buildings just right up the street, if we could directly feed them, now we can indirectly by putting it in the grid. That's basically what we were told by TVA. Yeah, we'll buy it, we'll put it in the grid, but we're getting it basically secondhand. That's a good thing, and I don't have anything against their green power plan. I think it's a good deal. But my question to you is and we haven't talked about this, is the electrical generation. If you had a facility where you could generate the power that was local to either a private industry or to our schools, because we know we're going to have fixed costs to our schools, period. can you generate electricity and send it directly to our schools, bypass TVA, is what I'm asking. If we, say, set up a generation plant close to one of our facilities. I mean, we've got some huge school properties where we've got 3 schools in several different locations, and they're going to be sucking a lot of electricity. Now, it's 12 kilowatt hours. You know, I don't know the conversion on how much a school facility like that would use, but that's something I'd like you to expound on and tell me, can you generate electricity and send it directly without transmission lines from TVA?
Yes, sir. You know, one of the things we always look at in power generation is what we call behind-the-fence generation. So that would be if you had a large school complex, it could use a significant portion of this power. We would look at generating that power near the school, using it at the school, and would not require transmission to use that power. I would not expect, even though I know you've got some complexes with maybe 3 or perhaps 4 schools on a common campus, you probably could not use all of this power at one location. So you're probably going to do a hybrid of what you're suggesting, is use as much of that power at one location as you can, and then you would what we call wheel that power to another location. But under this new program, and like I said, it's not completely out yet, but we're told they've announced it and they're working on the regulations. Middle Tennessee Electric would be able to distribute that power, and the negotiations would be between the county and Middle Tennessee Electric, and TVA really wouldn't have anything to do with setting the price. So you would end up paying Middle Tennessee Electric. We've not had discussions with them on this, but I can tell you in other localities, typically for wheeling power, they're going to get, you know, maybe 2 cents a kilowatt hour for the wheeling, the distribution, and so you would be saving the difference in what you're currently paying as a retail rate, which I'm guessing is probably something in the neighborhood of 9 cents. That's a guess, but I'd say that's pretty close.
Okay, and I'm the kind of guy, I believe anything you tell me, and then I go check. I've already checked on some of this on the front end, okay, and here's what I've got to tell you, what I've been told. Now, you mentioned there's some new regulations coming in, so that may be the difference from what I've heard. Basically, Middle Tennessee Electric has told me they buy their power from TVA. You know, and they're the ones that have the transmission lines to provide that power, you know, coming from the hydroelectric, coal, whatever, and that it ain't going to happen. So, you know, I'm gonna have to see some, you know, ink, black ink in on a white sheet of paper saying, yes, this is approved by, you know, the state regulators or whoever oversees this. For me to buy into us being able to generate electricity to go direct to our facilities. And I understand what you're saying. You know, we probably don't have a facility that could take that much power, and I would assume that we would be able to feed that off to either the TVA or Middle Tennessee Electric. But those are the things that I'm going to need you to show me.
Sure. And we had some preliminary conversations with Middle Tennessee. Mike, was that maybe a year and a half ago now? It's been quite a while. And at that point, what they indicated to us, they would be very happy to enter into these discussions, but they were not going to have discussions with multiple people that the county might be considering working with. So they were going to wait until the county gave them direction as to who they wanted to work with, and then they would have those conversations with one party rather than multiple parties. So at least that's what they told us in our meeting, was they were going to wait for the city or the county or both to make a decision which direction, and then they would have those discussions. And in this first phase of the study, that would be absolutely one of the most important things we would be doing, is pinning down locations, their willingness to participate, and what their charges for wheeling that power would be. And obviously, if they're not willing to wheel the power, then we go back to having to locate with a large industrial customer and go that route.
Okay, kind of follow up on where I'm headed with this is too, I personally am not interested in operating a electrical generation plant. Is that something your company would do? You know, for instance, we said, you know, a county-owned facility, and that's about $40 a ton. Now, if we let you do everything, you're saying basically a tipping fee would be 55 to 60. However, if you're generating electricity, which is the end product, I assume that we're buying that electricity with this tipping fee. Is that correct assumption, or is it not? I mean, are we going to be paying you for power, or am I going to be getting this from the tipping fee that I'm putting in? That's what I want to know.
No, you will be paying a tipping fee to process the waste, but there would still be a charge, whether it's the county or someone else using the power, there would still be a charge for the power. So you'd be saving money on the power, because obviously you could sell it to yourself cheaper than what you're currently paying, because you're buying power now from TVA through Middle Tennessee Electric. But yes, the pro forma is based on the county buying the power and or selling it to an industrial user.
Bill, I think you got the same look on your face that I got on mine.
Okay.
I missed part of that now.
Okay.
You know, you basically said, here's power I'm generating, so it's going to cost me less, but yet you're saying I'm going to pay you for generating it for me. So you're going to sell me electricity from the tonnage. You know, I'm going to pay you, say, $55 to $60 a ton tipping fee, and you're going to turn around and sell me the electricity byproduct at a cheaper rate than I can get from TVA or Middle Tennessee Electric.
And that's a negotiation. That goes back to what Commissioner Harris was asking earlier. You know, we can do a hybrid partnership. Perhaps the county wants to operate the waste processing part of it, but they're not comfortable with the power part of it. So the price of the power and the price of the tip fee, if you will, those go hand in hand. If one goes up, the other goes down, or vice versa. So the cheaper you want, for example, the schools, if you want them to have low-cost power, the tip fee may go up a little bit. If you want both of them balanced, which is what our current numbers are based on, would be just displacing what you're currently paying for power, then that's where the tip fee is at the 55 if you're looking at a merchant facility.
Well, you know, it's just like you said a while ago, politicians, one of the best things that we can do is keep our tax rate low, and that's what I'm looking here is, you know, I know I've got fixed cost on our electrical bills. And bottom line, if I can cut that cost, and you know, I'm trying to make lemonade out of all this trash here and sell it on the corner or wherever and make us some money, and you know, keep that cost down for our citizens. And you know, if we can save $10 million a year, or you know, whatever the equivalent would be on electrical power, you know, that's very substantial for me. But I need to see those figures and say, okay, we could put this plant up, say, you know, any given facility, I can get you usage on how much power, say, one of these complexes are bringing in. But I'd like to see, okay, we can set up a power plant here, and this is what we can generate, and this is basically what it's going to cost you. Now, that's what I need to see.
Okay. Well, those are what I would propose in phase one of the study. We would be doing the detailed engineering to give you detailed answers to that. We've given you bracketed numbers in the proposal in front of you because we've not done all of that engineering specific to Rutherford County. The information you have is based on projects that we're doing for other counties that are already paying for the engineering. So.
Okay. Anywhere else in the country that you're doing this? I know you had some facilities on track when we visited last.
Yeah, we do not have another facility under construction as of yet. We do have other communities that are in the study phase right now and have funded the studies.
Thank you.
Yep.
So we provided 85,000 tons waste stream in a year. Is there any way to equate how much power that delivers?
You know, the base case I've put in here would be the 400 tons per day, which works out to about 140,000 tons. So at 85,000, and that's for 12 megawatts. So at 85,000, if I'm doing the math right, you're looking at about 9 megawatts of power that you could produce for that. And I'm guessing, once again, not knowing, but I'm guessing as you look for large county uses, typically your sewer plant or your water plant are going to be one of your largest county uses. Clearly, the schools are another one, but sewer and water tend to be where you got a lot of large pumps, and that may be your single largest point load, if you will.
County doesn't have sewer plant.
Oh, okay. City does that?
But I was curious, what would be the point load? That's the largest point load.
If we're going to try to locate the power plant where we can not use transmission, but have the power plant next to the largest load.
What do you assume that load is? That was my question. What do you assume? What is a sewer plant? Are they a 12 megawatt?
You know, I don't know the size of your particular plant, but off the top of my head, I would say you're probably looking at 4 or 5 megawatts at what I'm guessing the size of your sewer plant.
And a 3-campus school facility, where would that be in that? I know you're ballparking it.
No, I'm guessing completely at that, but I would guess maybe 3 megawatts, but that's a total guess on my part. I am an electrical engineer, but I've been in garbage for a long time now, so.
Okay, I need to go through some steps.
Okay.
Number one, if this committee wants to do business with you, we start off with a study. $50,000, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. How do we go from there to the next step? Do the study, and then where do we go to where we go to the $200,000 phase?
Becky, I've got some slides on that. Maybe we should jump into that quickly. If you'd go to the next, yeah. You know, in our development phase, we break it into 3 pieces, and that's because doing full engineering for a facility is expensive. Whether the county pays for it or whether our investors pay for it, somebody has to pay for that work. And by the way, we do offer an option where investors pay for this, but they're going to need a commitment from the county before they're going to invest their money, obviously. So the first step, if you go to the next slide, please, is the concept phase. As I said, number one is going to meet with TVA and Middle Tennessee Electric, and let's pin down exactly what the rules and what the prices are going to be from them to make this project work. The second thing would be to work with Mac, to work with his counterpart at the city if they become a part of the project, to work with any other community that you may want to include in the project, and right-size the facility so that we're not building a lot bigger than you foreseeably need, but at the same time you want it a little bit larger to accommodate growth and planned growth. And then the third thing is demonstrating the economic viability, and that's giving you that detailed pro forma that Commissioner P. was asking for, where we tell you, it's going to be $42.31 for a tip fee, and we're going to sell power at 7 cents and a half, or whatever those numbers come out to. That's part of what gets done in that detailed engineering study. And you really can't have specific answers to that until you do the work. And
so it'd be a $750,000 investment by the county.
That gets you all the way to design drawings.
Anything, right?
Yes. Okay. By the county or by our investors. If it's a merchant facility, they can bear the cost of the studies, but they're going to need commitments from the county before, And
an additional $20 tip fee.
Correct. Yep.
I got 2 more questions. I'm sorry, Chairman Cush.
No problem.
I want to be as thorough as I can. I need 2 things. Number one, I want you to take us step by step to where they throw the trash in their dumpster to your process. You understand what I'm saying?
Okay.
When Matt gets the trash, he sends it to you, right? Okay, take me from there.
Are you talking about the steps of our process?
I don't need to go into technology. I'm just saying, okay, we dump it at your place, and then what happens?
We It drives across scales at our place. It's dumped into the front-end hopper, and at that point, it's an automated system that's going to use shredders and magnets and eddy currents to separate out the recyclable materials, to separate out the inerts that don't need to be in the fuels, that primarily being rocks and glass. And then the rest of the material goes through the rest of the process and comes out at fuel on the other end. And that all happens in one building.
The inerts that have to go to a landfill, are you taking that cost of landfilling it? Or would that come back to the county?
The pro forma assumes that about 10% of the material will be going to a landfill, and that's baked into our numbers, that would have to be transported to a landfill if Middle Point wasn't available, or it'll be a small amount of material, so that just depends on where it would be going.
But you're saying that's cost you would absorb. If that cost we would have to pay.
If it's a merchant facility, that would be cost the project would absorb. If it's a county-owned facility with the lowest tip fees, then that's baked into the $40. It'll cover that cost, but that would be the project covers it no matter who owns it.
Mark, how, to tag on to Chairman Harris's question, how deep into the three-prong investment of 50, 250, whatever the other number, how deep into that are we on the hook until we say, oh man, this isn't as pretty as we thought it was, deal's off?
If you look at our little graph on, I'm not sure which, page 5 of our proposal, the financial proposal, at each phase, there's a decision point.
Okay.
And so that's a decision point. We will come back to the county with all of the information. We'll review it with this committee or the full commission, whoever's appropriate, and then you'll take the decision, do you want to continue with the process? So you're not on the hook for anything beyond each phase. And that's in California. Like I said, I'm going to California next week to meet with a community that costs a lot more out there. A, because I've got to go to California, and B, things just cost more out there. But they've been through phase 1. We're about to wrap up phase 2, and we're going to be talking to them about quickly moving into phase 3. So, but at each step, you have the opportunity to stop, take as long as you need to make an informed decision about whether you want to continue or not.
Okay. And as I recall, your pellet, your end product, it is sterile. It's been heated to the point where you could lay a pile of it out on the ground and let it just disintegrate over time, and it would not harm anything.
Exactly.
The water column, nothing.
In the state of Tennessee, we're approved to use that material as compost.
Okay.
So the TDEC allows you to plow that into a field and not worry about it. So yes, and I've got a pile that we've intentionally left. It's been sitting there for 7 years now in the facility, and it doesn't change. It doesn't smell. It doesn't rot. It doesn't deteriorate. It's sterile and inert and stable. So.
All right. One more question on my end, then I'm done for a minute. One of the pillars on your RFP and on your slide was your numbers and your capital investment, and the tipping fee and everything that kind of was associated with it was based on a 400 ton per day requirement. And I'm doing some simple math, which is always dangerous, but I think you made the conversion. That was about 140,000 tons per year. Well, I think yesterday we went through the exercise that between us and the city of Murfreesboro, just those two, we were in the 85-ish thousand as is. So we are woefully shy of your 140.
And that's based on 16 hours of processing time. So we can cut back to 13 hours or 12 hours or whatever makes sense initially. And then the other opportunity we have, at least what we see in Warren County, there will be industrial users and other people that will want to bring certain parts of their waste because they want to be zero landfill.
Right.
And so they will, in some cases, even pay a premium to bring waste to the facility. But we would limit it to people inside Rutherford County would be my commitment. I mean, you can do what you want to. If you operate the plant, you can bring waste from wherever, but knowing the sensitivities of this community, my recommendation will be, whether we own it or whether you own it, that there be an agreement that this is for waste generated within the confines of Rutherford County. We won't import anything.
Well, okay, but if we could say we are good at providing 100,000 and you need, 100,000 and you need 140,000, do you say, man, the deal's off, we need, and we...
That'll be part of this first phase where we right size it.
Okay.
And if we look at the waste that's available, if there may be some smaller communities you decide you want in or you want out, I don't know. But we'll decide what's the right size in this first phase, and we will adjust the CapEx and the size and the OpEx to. That's part of what we're doing in that first phase of the engineering, is getting those numbers right and working with you, with MAC, with the city, with whomever, to right size the facility.
So on a positive note, if we could talk a lot more cities within the county to be a stakeholder, and that 140 grows to 160 or 180,
sure,
that's also not a problem.
That's not a problem. That would be part of the process in this first phase.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's why we keep the number as small as we can for that first step, because you really can't make an informed decision until you have that information, and we really can't provide that information until we do a lot of work and spend some money on engineering. So that's why we do this phased approach.
And this proposal is the end product a fluff or a pellet?
The numbers we're using, if we're going to a fuel facility, Hearst Boiler prefers fluff, so it would be for fluff is what we're basing the numbers on, because that's actually what they prefer as the fuel for if we're doing a power plant with them.
And that's cheaper than producing the pellet?
That's cheaper than producing the pellet, yes.
Wayne.
You asked this question prior when you were here, of course, a year ago, possibly.
I've been here a few times. Yeah.
The answer, I assume, is still going to be the same, but I'm still going to ask you about reclamation or reclaiming the old landfill. The answer previously was pretty solid no. Is it still a solid no?
Let's call it a soft no now. We have done a little work on that, but yes, it's not something we would be prepared to recommend you do with this facility today. We are working with some communities that just keep insisting they've got the same problem and want us to consider processing some old waste. We would not accept responsibility for what's in that waste, because with old landfills, nobody knows for sure what was buried there, but we could work with you to, first you have to sift out the dirt, because you've got the daily cover that does us no good. But if we could sift that in or sift that out using a trommel or whatever, and either the county could do that or we could work with you, the remaining material we could help with. But I'll be honest, you've got to remember that material is going to have to pay a tip fee once again as well. So that's going to get very expensive if you're going to trommel the material, do something with the dirt, and then still pay $40 a ton as a tip fee to have it processed. That's going to be very expensive landfill reclamation. So when I say a soft no, is it possible? Probably so. Do I recommend it today? No, I still really don't recommend it.
Question?
Steve.
Does your facility run off of electricity?
Yes.
Does it use an enormous amount of electricity?
We use about, on a facility this size, we'll use about 1.5 megawatts, so we would use some power.
Do you know what it costs once the facility is built and up in operation? What does it cost to convert 1 ton of trash to usable power?
That's not some math I want to try to do in my head right now, but I can get back I guess through Becky or whatever, I'll get you an answer to that question, but that's not something I can quickly do in my head.
Have you
sir.
never been asked that before?
Not that specific question.
Back to me?
Yes.
All right. Anybody else? All right, two more things. Are you our contact person? You'll be the one we'll deal with one-on-one?
Mike Webb back here at the back of the room is probably a little easier to get hold of than I am. And so we will be sure you have his contact information. And
Well, one of the things we ask, or I ask everyone that's bidding on this is, will you be open and transparent with this committee to meet with us and to go over the specifics and the operation?
Absolutely.
Okay. And my last question to you is education. How are you going to provide education to the county?
You know, I meant to mention that, and I skipped over that in my notes. One thing I'd like to answer to that, we're already providing education to some of the citizens of Rutherford County because they're already coming to our plant in Warren County for tours. And we've had student groups there, we've had civic groups there, we've had numerous groups of various county leaders, including yourselves there. So we're already open to that at our Morrison facility, but certainly any facility here in Rutherford County, just like you saw in the tour in Morrison, we will have the glass wall and the stairways where we can conduct safe tours and do those things we can to promote what the county is doing, and you know, and if you do a curbside recycling or whatever, you know, all of these things work together. If you have some curbside recycling, we need to jointly be talking to the community and helping educate on what goes in the recycling bins versus what goes to waste away. If someone like Lincoln is handling C and D, I'm sure he'd want to participate as well. So, you know, everybody would work together in that education. But by all means, we intend to have tours and participate in education and already doing so.
Say this facility that you have in Morrison, would it be the same facility here where you could take tours in it as well as the one that we did in Morrison?
Oh, yes, sir. That's what I was saying. We would build this facility in in Rutherford County so that you could conduct tours here. And quite frankly, even if it were a county-owned facility, Waste Away would want to negotiate the right to use it for sales tours as well, because you guys are a lot closer to the airport than we are. So not only would we want to be educating people in Rutherford County, but literally from around the world. I mean, we've had people from China and from Russia and from all of Latin America and the Caribbean. I don't know how many countries we've had through there in even the past 5 years, but
Must be, extravaganza on that one.
Yeah. And Mike, I'll segue to, there's so many ways to segue into these, and people all over the world are looking, but nobody's buying. To help me embrace that disconnect.
The disconnect we had was until we got the EPA certification, which we've only had for about 3 years now, was people were afraid they would be classified as an incinerator, and particularly here in North America, people do not want to build waste incinerators. So in the past 3 years since we got that certification, it takes 2 or 3 years for a lot of communities to make these decisions, and so that's why we have several of these projects getting close to starting construction now.
So you're seeing more projects move into some portion of this development phase in the last 3 years?
We have 2 projects now that are about to go into the preliminary design phase where they've already funded the first 2 steps.
Are you going to generate electricity with those projects? Are they trending that way?
Actually, one of them is, as I mentioned earlier, is going to a cement kiln in their county that could already use the fuel without a power plant. The other one is doing the same thing with an existing paper mill. So no, they're not power plants right now.
They're going to take your byproduct and consume them in the kiln and the paper mill?
Correct.
And so if
they're
we
using
didn't
coal now, so this would be displacing coal
as fuel.
As a fuel.
So your process stops sooner in those locations and your byproduct leaves, as opposed to continuing through gasification or whatever.
Right.
Is there a alternative to electricity in Rutherford County that you see as viable?
The electricity is going to be the most economically viable. You can make compost, but compost is $10 a ton unless you make too much, and then you're maybe paying $10 a ton to get rid of it if you make enough. So electricity is really what I think you're going to need for the economics to work in Rutherford County.
Your byproduct has not become a commodity yet.
It's a commodity in that the cement kilns, all of the major manufacturers of cement have certified this fuel. Hearst Boiler has certified this fuel. So if you happen to have a cement kiln, a Hearst Boiler, or a paper mill in your area, then yes, it's a commodity. But we're a localized commodity, might be fair right now.
Your MSW is in MSW is the materials Pratt would consume separated from MSW, or would you be receiving the papers and cardboard?
I'm not exactly familiar with Pratt's proposal. I saw their name on the list.
A paper mill, just disregard Pratt. Generically speaking, if there were a paper mill involved, could they take your byproduct, skip the electricity component, and add it to our cardboard and paper?
What they are typically doing with cardboard and paper at a paper mill is they're using that as feedstock to make paper.
Yeah, pulp.
Whereas what our material would be used for is to fuel, and actually they are fueling a boiler to make steam for the paper, and they also make electricity at the paper mills is what they use a lot of their fuel for, because they use so much electricity they generate their own typically.
I think where you're going, Phil, is the recycled commodities we already have separated out to be recycled would not go to his facility.
Right.
The recycled commodities that got mixed in with the trash would wind up at his facility.
Well, one thing I asked the other night is, what about your carbon footprint? If you're causing combustion, you're releasing something into the air, even if you've got a clean fuel. So what's the bottom line on that?
Blue Source is one of the preeminent engineering firms that calculates life cycle of carbon. They call it the life cycle analysis. And so we had them do that analysis for a project in Canada a couple of years ago. And their analysis on that, for every ton of waste that was processed at Waste Away, we saved a net of, was it 1.7 metric tons of CO2. The reason for that is we're saving the methane that would have been generated at the landfill, which is 24 times more potent than CO2, and we're displacing the fossil fuel that would have been used to make either the electricity or the steam. So we actually we're extremely positive, or maybe to be exactly accurate, we reduce the carbon footprint significantly with what we're doing.
Which you just explained was counting the combustion to generate the electrical power.
Correct. Whether it's the county or whether it's an existing power plant, that's the same answer.
My last line of questioning, I know it's late, you can stop me if you need to, and I'm sure we can have this gentleman back, but what is your recommended scenario of your three? Completely county, completely private, or the triple P? What's your recommendation?
I think, and it may have been Commissioner Harris, I'm not sure, somebody on this side, and I'm sorry, I can't remember who, kind of hit upon it earlier. I can tell you with the studies that have gone through phase one, in every example so far that we've done through the phase one, the host community has decided, hey, I'd rather save $20 on the tip fee because there's really no risk in operating the waste portion. The power plant, and I'm sorry, I don't remember which of the three of you suggested maybe the county didn't want to operate a power plant. That piece, I would suggest probably we let ESI operate it because they're more experienced at operating power plants than even Waste Away would be. So that would be my recommendation, would be to form, let them operate the power plant, let the county operate the waste processing. Obviously, Waste Away for the first year is going to have a big hand in helping with training and supervision. The fact that we're so close makes all of that a whole lot easier than it's going to be in some of these California and Canadian facilities. But that's kind of where I think it will end up in the study, but it's up to the commission.
Your technology and your process, we purchase and then we build a plant under your direction. And y'all step aside except for consultation.
Typically when we've gotten all the way through the process, typically what an owner-operator is going to ask for is for the first, in some cases it's been as short as 90 days, in some cases it's been a full year, but they will actually want us to provide full-time plant supervision for that first year, just to be sure everybody knows what they're doing and are doing it correctly. Beyond that, Waste Away insists on a technical support agreement, and we will not sell our equipment without a long-term technical support agreement, and that agreement goes for 20 years. So we're going to have a hand in being sure that equipment operates correctly for 20 years. So we're not going to sell you something and run away. It's of course you guys know where we live. We couldn't run away here anyway. But so yes, sir.
Any additional questions for Mark or Mike, Steve?
Commissioner Harris, did you ask about the backup plan? I was thinking.
Backup plan you said was fluff, right? So you.
If something went down.
Handle the facility here, if something happened, you could use Manchester as a backup plan.
It's really not big enough to use as a full backup plan because this facility would be a lot larger. But, we do 2 or 3 things, and this is typically part of the feasibility phase of the study. We will identify in that phase what we call the critical path of the facility. The tipping floor is sized for a minimum of 3 days storage, and if it's at what we call a highly critical facility, and by what we mean by that is if it goes down, there's nowhere else this waste can go, then we can build that tipping floor for up to 10 days of storage. Typically, we would only look at that like on an island or somewhere in the Caribbean where there really is nothing else you can do. So we can store up to 3 days waste. We have typically 5 to 10% of our CapEx is in spare parts and secondary, shredder decks and those things that possibly could break. So we're looking at a maximum of 4 hours downtime in a processing day, and we actually schedule 8 hours for maintenance and downtime. So we do not experience long-term breakdowns, but there is redundancy built into the equipment. We have an inventory on site for critical parts should something break, and then a small amount, and then the tipping floor can handle, if we're down for a day or 2 days or something, or over holidays, and maybe not here in Rutherford County, but in some communities. The processing facility may close for a long weekend, but they still want to allow people to bring waste to the facility on a holiday or something. So if we had that kind of scheduling, we need enough storage capacity on the tipping floor to handle that. But yeah, there's really not anything long-term that's going to break. I guess, a tornado or something, perhaps we could envision an earthquake or tornado. And in that case, whether it's the county operating or whether it's a merchant facility, certainly we would, in probably the second probably the second phase under feasibility, we would look at contracting with some landfill somewhere as an outlet. If the wheels just fall off and we've got twice as much garbage as we normally have because of a storm or something, we would contract for that outlet as part of the project.
So if we had COVID-19 clutter clean out and all of a sudden the volume goes up 75 or 80%, you would have an agreement in place for anything excess. Okay.
Exactly. Have you actually had that kind of a spike with COVID?
Yeah.
Okay.
All over Middleton, well, all over the country, actually. It's about an average of 57 to 60%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike?
Well, you actually have two questions there. That one is that plant not working, so the garbage is backing up and stacking up on the front end. On the back end, you have your electrical
power
generation.
plant, right.
So you've got some kind of stockpile of the fuel source in case the plant's not working. So you've got two sources to stock things, depending on what's going on.
Exactly, that's a good point. And as I said, we've actually stored fuel intentionally just to prove it can be done for 7 years now, and it's fine. So we can store fuel for a long time if there was an outage at the power plant for some reason.
Another thing that y'all just mentioned, the plant is designed to do 400 tons a day. We don't have enough for that, so we've idled back.
Right.
COVID hits, how quickly can you idle up?
It's just a matter of having the labor force to pick up the extra. That's purely a labor issue. And quite frankly, while we're saying we normally plan for 8 hours maintenance and 16 hours operation, if you've got a really busy week and we need to cut back maintenance to 4 hours a day and really push some more material through, now we can't do that for 6 months, but if we need to do that for a week or 10 days, we can push more material through the plant to get through a crisis of some kind.
You said 400 tons a day. I did some quick math there, and we were talking, y'all had talked about some of those questions or whatever, but what is that's not 365 days a year. That's...
Yeah, we normally figure like 350 days because of holidays and different things. Once again, understand, I've been doing projects in California most recently, and they have a lot of holidays out there. So, we've been using a 350-day work year out there.
310. Anybody else? Mark, I want to thank Phil. Question?
As a wrap-up, I wanted to express my gratitude for having a thorough plan, having a lot of points covered. It's a joy to have consistency, transparency. Just thank you for a good presentation. Y'all have obviously worked on it for some years.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for that.
Yeah, and I will remind you that the financing part of this should be on your desk. He's covered most of that already through the discussion. Most of it is with the proposal, and then he's talked about capital investment based on the variety of pillars that were discussed. So make sure you clearly understand the costing proposal as you fill out your scoring sheet too. So Mark, thank you. Mike, thank you very much for and Mike, refresh my memory. Are you a Rutherford County resident? Williamson County. Yeah, well, we still kind of like you.
Oh, and that's one point I forgot to make, Mike. I need to make this point, though. All 3 of my children are citizens of Rutherford County.
Fantastic.
Both of my grandchildren are.
Fantastic.
And we operate a manufacturing facility here in town. My family does.
Very good.
We have a vested interest in seeing this county do well.
All right. Very good. Gentlemen, thank you very much. All right, so Becky, I'm going to let you have some closing comments, but first of all, I want to remind you all that next Wednesday, the 21st, is our next Solid Waste Authority meeting. I need 3 scoring sheets turned in at the beginning of that meeting to Becky. It also looks like on April 21, we are going to be discussing, unless this has changed, waste revaluation, Waste Alliance, Straightway Enterprises. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. I've got one more topic of business, and I'll turn it over to Becky. As most of you know, either through the paper, or through the radio, or through Scuttlebutt, Republic has requested through the state an expansion request for their facility. Much has been said about that. We will be talking about Republic's proposal, I believe, the first part of May. So I won't give you my opinion on how I feel about that, but I do want you to try and keep an open mind as we review their RFP. It may be difficult to separate their activities and their requests, but we need to do the best we can to just focus on them as a regular one of 9 on the RFP request and ignore the activities that are going on locally. They deserve the same focus and diligence that the rest of the 8 do. So please bear that in mind.
You might want to clarify that was a lateral expansion.
Yes, lateral expansion. I don't think they've even requested a vertical one yet, but they still could do that in time to come. So yes, they're trying to maximize the remaining footprint they have with the lateral expansion. That has to go before a board first, and so there are little ways for it to be rubber stamped, but if you haven't heard or haven't read, you will soon about that. So Becky, I'm going to turn it over to you.
I'll just say thank you all for your time. I appreciate the questions you've had. If you have more questions between now and next Wednesday when I see you again, please feel free to reach out to me. I do think we've got a lot of good options and a lot of good things to look at as far as pieces to the puzzle. And I'll just second what Commissioner Cush said about the Republic expansion. As of today, there's nothing different. There's nothing different today, and there won't be anything different by the time we discuss their proposal on May 12th. So really, between now and then, there may be things said, there may be, there's a permit request on the table, but there won't really be anything big that's different between now and when we discuss it. And that's a tough thing to balance. I know that. I understand that. But otherwise, thank you all for your time.
Question.
Yes.
Next meeting, how many people we're going to be? 3?
3.
Cut it to 2? Which ones is it first? Tell me that one. But they'll all be here.
So, based on our activity tonight and last night, I mean, these have run into about, we got started late today, 6. So let's just say 3 hours. All right. Do we need to try and push one back to another date? Is 2 about the limit? Because they're averaging about an hour and a half apiece.
I think we can do however you all want to do it. We do have Pratt Recycling that was moved to May 19th, and that's just a night of 1. I would recommend that we keep Republic and Waste Management number one, separate, and number two, that be the topic or the company we discussed that night, because it is,
Yeah, I would agree with that.
there's a lot of information there. And they're the two that proposed everything.
Are the three that are scheduled for next meeting, are they as thorough, lengthy, yeah, thorough is a better word. Are they as thorough as the last two evenings, this evening and the evening before, you think? I want to give everybody their fair due, but I also don't want us get so tired that we start to glaze over on the third one.
And I agree with that.
I've looked at their RFP, and if you've had an opportunity to look, I believe we can get through these three in one night, in about 3 hours. If you want a shorter meeting, then
I'll just do a better job of ramrodding the meeting. How about that? We'll keep it on pace, and when it gets to the hour, we'll just start cutting them down. All right? Sound good? It's a good point, though. All right. No breaks then. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.